Sharon was just 17 when Mama Sharon took her to live with Pastor Jude. Sharon tried her best to persuade her mother that she was not possessed, just like Pastor Jude claimed. But it all fell on deaf ears. She had no choice but to obey her mother. Pastor Jude was very excited when he sighted Sharon and her mother from a distance. They exchanged pleasantries, and Pastor Jude offered both of them into his office. After many prayers and promises to chase away the evil spirits from Sharon, Mama Sharon finally left. Pastor Jude looked at Sharon and licked his lips. He was happy he had finally succeeded in having her. He had lusted over Sharon for a very long time, but he didn't know how to approach her without being seen as a fake pastor. Finally, he decided to use his title as a pastor to get what he wanted, and it paid off. He grinned and looked at Sharon once again. She avoided his eyes and bowed her head. Sharon felt very uncomfortable with how he looked at her, but she kept her cool and consoled herself that she was there for just a short time and would return home soon. Pastor Jude took Sharon to the room where she would stay until he was done with her. After showing her all the necessary things she would need, he left the room. Sharon heaved a sigh of relief and slumped on the bed. She was tired after a long day of arguing with her mother, so she slept off immediately. She woke up hours later to realize something was crawling on her body. She jumped out of the bed in fear and started searching for her touchlight in the little bag she brought, because the room was very dark. In the process of searching desperately, she felt what seemed like someone's hand on the bed. She stepped back immediately and shouted, "Who is there?" The bed made a little noise as the person climbed down the bed and approached her in the dark. The figure approached her and stood right in front of her. Sharon's body stiffened. She could feel the person's breath on her face. She wanted to scream for help, but she couldn't. After a few seconds of standing there with the figure, she heard Pastor Jude say, "Come to bed, Sharon. I have to return home to my wife before she finds out I am missing." Sharon gasped. She couldn't believe her ears. Why did Pastor Jude sneak into her dark room? And why was he telling her to join him in bed? Before she could figure anything out, Pastor Jude dragged her to bed. She resisted when she realized what he was trying to do with her. She fought hard to escape, but he overpowered her. Her flare gown gave him an easy passage, and he didn't waste time to slide into her. Sharon screamed in pain when she felt something huge in between her legs. She hit him, begged him, cried for help, but Pastor Jude wasn't done with her yet. He kept pounding. After what seemed like an hour, he stood up, breathing like an elephant, adjusted his trousers, carried his Bible, and left the room. Sharon lay on the bed motionless. Breathing was difficult for her. Tears stopped coming out of her eyes and she couldn't move. She just laid there. The pain she felt from her part was excruciating. She couldn't believe she just lost her virginity, her pride as a woman. The next morning, she woke up to a loud knock on the door. She felt pains all over her body, especially her down part. She struggled to get up from the bed and open the door for whoever it was. She opened the door to see Pastor Jude. Her jaws dropped immediately. She wasn't expecting to see him after what he did last night. He told her her mother would be visiting her that morning to give her some clothes and food so she should clean up and get ready to see her. After delivering the message, he left immediately. Sharon shut the door in disgust and returned to bed. She was about to climb the bed when she noticed blood on the bedsheet, and that broke her heart even more. She sighed and sat on the bed. She kept sobbing and cursing Pastor Jude. After a while, she got into the bathroom, freshened up, and waited for her mother to arrive. She couldn't wait for her to get there so she could tell her what happened. A few minutes later, she heard another knock on the door. She strolled tiredly to open the door, and it was Pastor Jude again. He told her to meet her mother in his office. Sharon insisted she wanted to meet her mother in her room, but Pastor Jude was wise enough to know she wanted to show her the evidence of what transpired between them the previous night, so he left without saying a word to her. Sharon hissed in anger and decided to go see her mother. She finally arrived at the office. Immediately, she saw her mother. She ran desperately to hug her, as if she wanted some protection from something. Mama Sharon burst into laughter when she saw her actions. She couldn't believe Sharon missed her that much, but she hugged her back. After the mother and daughter conversation, Sharon decided to tell her mother, Mama, Pastor Jude raped me last night. He took— Shut up your mouth. How could you say such a thing about a pastor, an ordained man of God for that matter? Mama Sharon interrupted her. I am not lying. I swear to you he raped me last night. How could I utter such a lie against him? Sharon insisted. I don't believe you, Sharon. You never wanted to come here in the first place. You were just looking for a way to escape. I know you are not the one talking. It is that demon inside of you. I pray Pastor Jude should cast it out soon so you can be free, Mama Sharon concluded. Sharon looked at her mother in disappointment. How could she not believe her? She decided to try again. Okay, Mama. If you don't believe me, I have evidence. Why not come with me to the room I stay in? I have something to show you. Pastor Jude told me not to enter your room. He said the room is filled with demons, and if I go there, I might not come out alive. Mama Sharon replied. Sharon was shocked. How could he utter such a lie to her mother? Pastor Jude walked in almost immediately and informed Mama Sharon that it was time for prayers, so she had to go so he could battle with the demons. Mama Sharon thanked him and gave Sharon the things she brought for her. Then she left. Sharon returned to her room and slumped on the bed dejectedly. She noticed the bedsheet was changed to a new one. She shook her head in disgust and kept cursing Pastor Jude. She couldn't eat the food her mother brought for her. Her heart was bitter about the fact that her mother didn't believe her. She was deep in thought when her door flung open aggressively. Without wasting time, Pastor Jude jumped on her, tore her clothes, and sucked hard on her nipples. Sharon cried in pain, and when he was satisfied, he zipped down his trousers and pounded her roughly. Pastor Jude locked her room door from the outside and kept the key. She wasn't allowed to leave the room unless her mother wanted to see her. She stayed with Pastor Jude for 2 weeks. He had sex with her whenever he wanted, and whenever he felt like it until he got tired of her and decided it was time for her to leave. He told Mama Sharon the demon was cast out and Sharon was free once again. Mama Sharon was happy, so she took her home. 1 month later, Sharon found out she was pregnant. Sharon was devastated. She locked herself in her room and cried her eyes out. How could she be pregnant at the age of 17? She pinched herself several times to wake up from such a terrible dream, but sadly, it was reality. She had no choice but to accept her fate. Mama Sharon started seeing the changes in Sharon's body, and she became worried, but she waved it off with the excuse that she was just healthy. Sharon couldn't hide the pregnancy anymore, so she told her mother about it. When Mama Sharon heard it, she was furious. How could she know a man at her age to the point of getting pregnant? Sharon hurriedly told her that Pastor Jude was the owner of the pregnancy, and that infuriated Mama Sharon even more. How could Sharon feel so comfortable lying against an ordained man of God? She pounced on her mercilessly and threw her out of the house. Sharon was helpless. She had nowhere to go, so she returned to see Pastor Jude. She told him about the pregnancy, and he was shocked. Sharon, you can't be pregnant now. I am a married man and a pastor for that matter. What do you think the church will say if they find out you are pregnant for me? Pastor Jude lamented. How is it my fault? Have you forgotten how many times you raped me all in the name of casting demons from me? You have to do something fast because I can't return to my mom's house. She chased me out of the house. Sharon replied amidst tears. Pastor Jude thought hard and came up with something. Sharon, just stay here. I will be right back, Pastor Jude said, and left. A few hours later, Pastor Jude returned with a black waterproof. He took Sharon to her room, dropped the black waterproof on the table, and left. Sharon checked what was in the black waterproof and saw different colors of medicines. It dawned on her that Pastor Jude wanted her to abort. She finally made up her mind to get rid of the child. That was the only way to save her family from public disgrace. Having this child will keep reminding me of the pain I went through in this house. I should abort it and be free, she thought. She told Pastor Jude her decision. He was very excited and didn't waste time giving her the abortion pills he bought, but that was after she finished eating. After taking the drugs, Pastor Jude left. Sharon lay on the bed, awaiting the effects of the drugs, but nothing happened. So, she slept off. At midnight, she woke up to a massive pain in her abdomen. She held her tummy tight in pain and kept changing positions to see if it would make her feel better, but nothing worked. The pain increased. She shouted, holding the bedsheets tight. She tried to stand up, but she couldn't. Red fluid was gushing out of her private part. She wailed in pain. Her head became very heavy, and she fell to the floor but was too weak to stand up. The room was very dark, and she had no phone to call Pastor Jude or her mother for help. She had to bear the pain alone. She kept praying to God to spare her life, but her voice was too weak to be heard. Things became blurry, and at a point, she felt the pain no more and gave up the ghost. Sharon's lifeless body lay on the cold floor, blood pooling around her. The dark room was eerily silent, except for the faint hum of insects outside. It wasn't until morning when Pastor Jude decided to check on her that he realized what had happened. He was horrified, not out of guilt, but fear of what would happen if the truth got out. He paced back and forth in the small room, his mind racing. He thought of countless excuses, lies, and ways to cover up the incident. The first step, he decided, was to get rid of the evidence. Wrapping Sharon's lifeless body in a bedsheet, he moved her to his car under the cover of dawn. Driving to a remote area, he disposed of her body in a shallow grave, praying aloud for forgiveness and justification for his actions. God, I was doing your work. This was not my fault, he muttered repeatedly, as though trying to convince himself. Meanwhile, Sharon's mother, Mama Sharon, was home, oblivious to the horror her daughter had faced. Days passed, and she began to grow worried when there was no word from Sharon. She decided to go to Chicago and see if she could find her daughter there. When she visited the church to ask about her daughter, Pastor Jude told her Sharon hadn't seen her ever since he successfully cast the demon out of her. Perhaps the demons had returned to her body, and she is still under the influence of her so-called demons. Mama Sharon, blinded by her unwavering belief in the pastor, didn't question his words. She left the church in tears, blaming herself for not doing enough to save her daughter. But Sharon's absence didn't go unnoticed in the community. Some people began whispering about her sudden disappearance, while others questioned Pastor Jude's increasingly suspicious behavior. Among those suspicious was a young journalist named Ada. She had heard troubling rumors about the pastor's misconduct. Ada decided to investigate, starting with interviews with people who had been to the church. Her investigation led her to Mama Sharon, who tearfully recounted how Pastor Jude had taken her daughter under his care to cast out demons. Something about Mama Sharon's story didn't sit right with Ada. She dug deeper, uncovering accounts of other girls who had faced similar situations, but were too afraid to speak out. Ada's persistence finally paid off when one of the girls decided to share her story anonymously. Armed with this evidence, Ada confronted Pastor Jude, who denied everything and threatened legal action. But Ada wasn't deterred. She published an exposé detailing the pastor's history of abuse, sparking outrage in the community. The police were forced to open an investigation. As the investigation gained traction, Sharon's grave was discovered. An autopsy revealed the truth. She had died from complications of the abortion pills Pastor Jude had given her. The evidence was overwhelming, and Pastor Jude was arrested. In court, the truth unraveled. Sharon's story, along with testimonies from other victims, painted a damning picture of the man who had hidden behind the cloak of religion. Pastor Jude was convicted of multiple crimes, including rape and manslaughter, and sentenced to life in prison. Sharon's tragic story became a rallying cry for justice. Her name became a symbol of the fight against abuse and the need to hold people in positions of power accountable. Mama Sharon, filled with regret for not believing her daughter, became an advocate for victims of abuse. She shared her story to encourage others to listen to their children. Ada's investigative work not only brought justice for Sharon, but also empowered many others to come forward and speak their truths. The community learned a harsh but necessary lesson about blind faith and the importance of questioning authority, even in sacred places. Though Sharon's life ended tragically, her story sparked change, ensuring that no other girl would suffer in silence. Disclaimer: This story is a work of fiction created solely to raise awareness about the importance of parents listening to and protecting their children. It highlights the dangers of ignoring a child's concerns and the consequences of misplaced trust. The narrative is not intended to attack or criticize any religious organization or its leaders. Our goal is to foster conversations about child safety, parental responsibility, and vigilance in ensuring the well-being of every child. Thank you for watching. Remember, every child deserves to be heard and protected. Let's prioritize their safety and trust above all else. If you found this video insightful, please like, share, and subscribe for more awareness content. Together, we can make a difference.